Hi everyone, my name's Tim. Welcome to Tim Burbage Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a book tag video. So this is the off the top of your head book tag. I've actually been tagged in this twice. Once a while ago by basically Nedda, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get around to it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get to it. And then I also got tagged in it by J. Scott Phillips. So now I've had two people tag me. I really need to do it. So it's just 10 quick questions. Kind of off the top of your head. That's kind of what it's meant to be about. So, question number one. What was your favourite picture book as a child? Oh, I can't really remember being a child. It was quite a while ago. One thing as well is when I grew up in the Bahamas and then I moved to the UK just before my 7th birthday. So I think a lot of the books I read as a little child didn't make the trip. But I do remember The Very Hungry Caterpillar. But I don't remember a ton of other picture books but being a parent now, we did read loads of picture books with the kids, especially when they first came to us. And there's a few different picture books serve different purposes. So first of all, I have to talk about my wife's favorite picture book, which is Giraffes Can't Dance by Giles Andre, with the art by Guy Parker Rees. This was her little sister's favourite story and used to read it to her all the time. It's about a party in a jungle and the giraffe can't dance. He does a really bad job of dancing. But then he decides that actually this is the rhythm that he likes dancing to. And so everyone kind of comes around to his way of thinking and shows that you could be yourself. Because that's one thing I think picture books have some of them have a really important message that is key, and some of them can be a bit over the top. But I think this is quite a good one because it's about dancing to your own rhythm, dancing to your own beat, being yourself, which is nice. Then you have some that are just silly and involve wordplay and rhyming. One that's a classic in our house is Elephant Welephant by Nick Sharratt. It's literally just things that rhyme. Elephant Welephant. Rude Smelephant. There is pull out bits as well. Say the magic spelephant. Cheer up Cinderelephant. Things like that. Really simple wordplay. And generally we like books that rhyme more. I prefer picture books that rhyme. Though the one that I was trying to find it in our house, I couldn't find it. That doesn't rhyme, that one I really like, is a series called Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus by Mo Willems. Just because the sass on the pigeon and the formatting in the pages is really good and the art is very stylish and simple, and yeah, it's just really silly and I really like that. So question number two, what series did you love as a child? Book series, I'm guessing. So one, I've talked about Redwall before. Redwall was my jam. I literally only stopped reading them because I grew up. And now, the more I do BookTube, the more I'm like, oh, I just really want to reread them just to see what they're like. And then, because I think I only had 3 left. I think Brian Jakes only wrote 3 more that I didn't read before he died. And I'm like, oh, I could just finish them off. Maybe. We'll see. But another series that I really liked as a kid was a series by Robin Jarvis, and it's called the Deptford Mice trilogy, and it's about these mice that live in Deptford. And the first one was The Dark Portal. I remember that cover really vividly, and I can't remember what the last 2 were called. But then there was a spin-off series which was kind of like a side another trilogy of books. One was called The Alchemist's Cat. The second one was The Oaken Throne, I think, which was about squirrels and bats. And then the third one I really remember, which was called Thomas, because there's a character called Thomas Triton in a mouse called Thomas Triton in the trilogy, and he was one of my favourite characters, and this is his story, and I just remember it being incredibly emotional reading it. And I don't hear anyone talking about those at all. So yeah, I'm going to give my rep to the Deptford Mice trilogy by Robin Jarvis. Question number 3. The worst book you have read or tried to read? Ooh, I don't like being super negative, but some of the worst books. There's books that you don't like, because they're not things that you enjoy, or then there's books that you think are just executed really badly. Um, and I think this falls into that category for me. And this is going to be arranged. Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Like, it's an incredible classic story. It's a story that everybody knows. You have Jekyll and he does experiments, then he turns into Mr. Hyde and he's like, ah, you know. It's a staple of kind of Victorian era characters. It's probably because it's in the public domain, so it gets used a lot. People say Jekyll Hyde. It's in the lexicon. But the book is rubbish. Oh my goodness. So you think, Hyde has done some awful things. To start with, I think he just pushes a woman over, and then doesn't help her up. I think that's one of the things. I think he does kill a guy. I think one guy dies. But seeming as he's like a famous horror character, not much. And then the main story is someone, not Jekyll or Hyde, trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just a case of he goes somewhere and then he gets a letter. And then he opens the letter and he says, if this has happened, read this letter. And he reads the letter and the letter says, you need to go to this person. They'll explain everything. So you go to that person and that person's not there. But there's a letter and it says, if I'm not here, read this letter. And then he opens that letter and then it tells him the whole story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's literally, you're reading about someone reading letters. It's not like an epistolary novel where it's people writing back and forth and you've got subtext and you kind of try to gauge what's going on. No, it's just literally a man coming up and reading a book, reading a letter telling him the story. And it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating to read. Question number 4. Your favourite reading or book memory? Tough. I really like reading to the kids every day. We try to do it every day. That's a new memory. But one that I think will always stick with me was I was going to work up in London. We had like a team away day thing. And I was reading To Kill a Mockingbird on the train up. And To Kill a Mockingbird, I hadn't read it at school. And I was reading it and I was like, this is pretty good. Like, I'm liking this. It seems very separate stories, vignettes. And like, you know about the film and the trial. That's the main part. But there's all this other stuff because you're coming from Scout's perspective. And then we were just pulling into Vauxhall and then into Waterloo. I was getting off at Waterloo. And I was going to finish it, I think, just before the train reached Waterloo. And then you got that final moment with Boo Radley. And you just saw all the pieces come together to make the puzzle complete. And you know, you have that bit in films when like there's a heist or something and the guy realises he's been had and he goes, and then you see all the moments come together in like the montage of how it all works. I had that moment on the train and I felt really emotional. I felt just a well of emotion come up. And it was a beautiful, I think it was in like May time, a beautiful sunny day. And I walked down the Thames, down the South Bank, across the bridge into where the thing was. And I almost had tears in my eyes coming in, and they were like, Tim, are you okay? And I'm like, I just read a really good book. Yeah, so I'll always have that memory. Question number 5. A book you love as a movie. Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park is a fantastic book. It's such a good book. It's so interesting how it looks at chaos theory, and Michael Crichton tech thrillers have that thing where he takes everything to, not even to 11, to like 10.5. So it is believable. I need to read more of him. I would like to read more. Because I've loved everything I've read so far. But I do think Jurassic Park is the perfect movie. Because it's about dinosaurs, which is cool. But you care so much about the characters, and you see so much of the characters straight away. Like, you see how Dr. Alan Grant, Sam Neill's character, he doesn't like kids and he really doesn't like technology, and you spot all that stuff straight away and you see him come around. It's just that I think it is the perfect film. The music's brilliant. It's so tense. It's scary but not too scary. The effects still hold up. It's got a great cast. Just brilliant. So yeah, Jurassic Park. Number 6, a book you wish they would make into a movie. So I was looking through my Goodreads at like my 5 stars, you know, my favourite books, and I was like, oh, okay, Harry Potter, oh, Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, okay, oh, Lord of the Rings, oh, The Hobbit. If only they made films out of those. And then I had Mortal Engines, which they did make a film out of, but I haven't seen the film, and I've heard it's not very good, and it didn't do very well. But I did come to one, which was a book by an author who I really like called John Twelvehawks, and it's called Spark. Now, 1, I really like the book, and 2, I think it will make a really good film, because what Spark is about is the main character, who we're very focused on, is like an assassin that works for corporations. So he kills people, but it's about if I think you get the target is someone who has information on the company and can potentially take them to court or expose them for fraudulent dealings. So they need this person, this potential whistleblower, to be exterminated. So you've got action of you're following an assassin trying to take out a target, and there's complications involved because it's a story. But the thing that I found most interesting is Spark. The main character suffers from, I think it's called Cotard's syndrome, where he thinks that he is dead, and his body is dead, and he just has a spark inside of him, and this body is like a shell. He's completely disassociated from the world. So all he does, he wakes up and just he has only eats like protein shakes because he just needs to keep the shell going. He knows that this is fuel to keep the shell running, but otherwise, and he's completely dissociated from the world, which is super interesting. And I think it could be, you could have like the kind of thriller action beats of this assassin going out trying to do the thing, but also it almost be like American Psycho, in that this man, the main character, has such a strange view of the world, and if you manage to get that through the film, I think it'll be a really, really good film. And it's a really good book. Question number 7. A book character that you would like as a friend. Oh, there's loads. I think Samwise Gamgee would be everyone's best friend. I think Inigo Montoya would be a great friend. Yeah, there's loads. I think those are the 2 that kind of come to mind straight away. Because they're just really supportive and funny, and would be good to hang out with. Yeah, I think. Question number 8. A place you want to visit because of a book you've read. So for me, there's kind of 2 here. 1 would be Antarctica. I've read a couple of books about Antarctica, about Captain Scott and Shackleton, and I find explorers really interesting, and the polar region is kind of the Antarctic region is one of the last areas to be explored. So I find that interesting, and I remember talking to my friend's dad about it, and I was like, oh, I'm just reading Shackleton, it's amazing, and he was like, I just read Captain Scott, it's amazing, and he was like, oh, I've just been to Antarctica with the grandson of Captain Scott, or great grandson, and I was like, what? Yeah, so we talked about that for ages. And another place would be like the Yukon Territory up in Canada, because I'm reading so much Jack London at the moment, and you just get a real sense of the wilderness and the wildness of it. Question number 9. A non-fiction book you would recommend. So, I don't read a ton of non-fiction. I think kind of there's other methods of acquiring knowledge through non-fiction other than books that I find more interesting. Because one thing with non-fiction, as I read a bit, I just read it a lot slower, because I read a bit and I go, oh, that's interesting, and put the book down. Rather than like, oh, I need to know what happens next, because there tends to be not a lot of narrative thread with non-fiction. But there's a couple that come to mind. The first one is Captain Scott, a biography of Robert Falcon Scott. It's written by Sir Ranulph Fiennes. The thing that I really liked about that was Ranulph Fiennes has been there and done it. He's been to the South Pole, and he actually used Scott's maps and charts and followed the same path. And so was kind of doing, Scott famously was the second man to reach the South Pole after Amundsen. Ranulph Fiennes was like, I couldn't use anything that Amundsen used. He didn't make any record. He didn't do anything really. He just got a load of dogs, raced them to death to get there first, while Scott was doing so much more. So it was quite nice. And you just had that narrative pull of, how's he going to get there? How's he going to get back? And unfortunately, the very sad ending of it. Another one, which is a book that I picked up in a charity shop, just because of the author. I didn't really know what it was about. But the author is Chris Packham, who is a wildlife conservationist here in the UK. He presents Springwatch, and he's very passionate about animals. He's also autistic and kind of has a very interesting view on the world. And he wrote a memoir called Fingers in the Sparkle Jar. And I thought, oh, this is going to be quite interesting because it's about his view on wildlife and how he grew up and like being different and things like that. But oh my goodness, the way it was written. I was like, this is the difference between an autobiography and a memoir, because it was so stylish and ethereal, and it was mesmerizing. The prose was mesmerizing on how evocative, and it was just really, really good. It was really, really good. So I'd recommend that. And then finally, question 10. If you could hang out with an author all day, who would you pick and why? Interesting, because there's a few. I think John Twelvehawks is really interesting because I don't even know if it's a man. It's a pseudonym and no one has met them. Not even their editor has met them. They basically live off the grid. I follow them on Facebook and they post once every 6 months to once a year, and they just say, here's places that I've been. And they're always really random places. They're out living in the Himalayas or in the Gobi Desert or somewhere random. Jack London would be cool because he just led such an interesting life. He rode the rails. He did the gold rush. He sailed. He was a hobo. Just really, really interesting. Roald Dahl would be interesting because he was a character for sure. He had a load of stories. I think, he was a fighter pilot and then he was basically a spy in World War II. And then he was such a big personality. And then you've got someone who's like not typically an author but has written books, like someone like David Attenborough. David Attenborough, I think, is just one of the coolest people in the world. So he would be cool to hang out with for a day. He's one of my like fictional dinner party people. If you could have a dinner party and invite people over, David Attenborough would be on that list. And question 11 is to tag someone. So it's a YouTube channel that I found very recently because I did the Our Fantasy Bingo and I saw his video and I thought it was really good. And it's an Australian guy called Benjamin's Book Club, so I'm going to tag him in that. I want to say thank you to Nedda, and thank you to J. Scott Phillips for tagging me in this and making me do it. It's been quite interesting. It's been quite interesting to think about these things. Yeah, so if you've made it to the end, give me a light bulb emoji to think about an idea coming off the top of your head. And give this video a like. Please subscribe. I'm getting closer to 100. It'll be really nice to get to 100 by the end of May. And you could be the 100th person. If you just click that button, I'd really appreciate it. Comment below. I'll reply to every comment that I get. And I'll see you in the next one. And get out of my house!